The U.S. incarcerates more of our population than any other nation on earth, while championing civil rights and liberty. Our goal is to deconstruct the power of the state through thoughtful, independent perspectives on our society. I am M. Jane.
And I am Ty Bricker. Welcome to DeCarcerated, episode 3. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about Trump CNN town hall, which happened like a while ago.
Still relevant.
A while ago, like a few weeks ago. We're going to talk about DeSantis and Chris Christie officially entering the race. We're going to talk a little bit about the budget, or I should say the debt ceiling. Mel's going to talk about some health issue stuff, not like her health issue stuff, but just health stuff in general.
New medical recommendations.
Yeah, totally worth it. Even for you dudes, it's not just all chick orientated, I promise. And then we'll finish with our coward and hero of the week. All right, so let's get this party started. All right. May 10th, CNN invites Trump to a town hall style discussion debate followed immediately by a focus group. Okay. The first two questions in the town hall had to do with January 6th and January 6th, basically. Pardoning and insurrectionists that were convicted and the election results. And so immediately after, there was a focus group. And anybody that's ever watched a debate or a town hall or anything like that, you'll find that mass media likes to do these focus groups immediately following these debates and stuff, which is pretty cool, really. It's an interesting thing to kind of watch them do. And so we're going to play two clips for the questions being asked. The two questions being asked, we're going to do that back to back, and then we're going to play the focus group response as well, because the response to the focus group for the questions that the mediator asks them is pretty interesting. And I do get a kick out of focus group members just really giving it to the mediator. Like it's pretty interesting. And that's exactly what happens. Okay. So here we go. Clip number 1. Let's hear it.
Actually say we did far better in that election. Got the most that anybody's ever gotten as a sitting president of the United States. I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience, and maybe a couple that don't, but most people understand what happened. That was a rigged election.
That, by the way, deserved.
Okay. That's numero uno, all right? And that's asking directly about the election results, okay? So numero dos, here we go.
My question to you is, will you pardon the January 6th rioters who were convicted of federal offenses?
I am inclined to pardon many of them. I can't say for every single one, because a couple of them probably they got out of control.
So probably they got it.
All right, and so now those are our two questions, right? So the first one was the validity of the election. Second one was pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists that were convicted of federal crimes, by the way. Those were federal convictions. And here is the response from the focus group after the end of the town hall. So we're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves, but there's a method to this madness, I promise. Maybe there isn't.
Does it bother you that he keeps talking about 2020 and not 2024? I'll ask you first. This is Jonathan Leslie. He's 40, Republican, voted for Trump twice. How do you feel about those lies?
So I feel like part of it's also the media narrative, as you guys asked in the first question at the town hall about the 2020 election, rather than hurt stuff.
So don't you think it's time for the start talking about 2024 and not lies that are true?
Could the media ask him a question about 2024?
Well, there were questions, but you're right. That was the first thing that's something that was on our mind. That's why I was asked first.
What I want to ask you first of all is, do you think, show of hands, anybody think Donald Trump looks better after this town hall?
Nothing.
Any of you think he looks worse?
Nothing.
Maybe you think the same thing about him as you did when you walked in. So I'll be.
I mean, these are all like, these are Trumpies. Like, they showed up for the show. We're here for the show. You know what I'm saying? I mean, without question. And so, like, I mean, those are pretty interesting responses for sure. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. So like, why is Trump focusing on 2020? Why can't Trump move past that election? Why can't he start talking about the January 6th thing? Well, hello, the first two questions were specifically about what they don't want him to talk about, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's a question that we don't want to hear you talk about. The response. Oh, and here's another one too. So, all right. It's like, that's okay. Listen, CNN's ratings are garbage, like garbage. Okay. In a normal weekly cycle, the ratings sit around 300,000 viewers a week. Okay. Total. That's total for the whole week. That's a 24/7 news cycle. You know, 7 days a week.
This like
And so-
nationwide or globally?
It's global. I mean, CNN's pretty global. 300,000 viewers. All right. Let's have a little context here. Tucker Carlson, before Fox so brilliantly chopped the dude, okay, got around 3.6 million viewers a week. All right. That's a 1 hour show, 5 days a week. So 5 total hours out of the 7-day cycle, I guess. And he pulls in 3.6, did anyway, used to. I'm sure Fox and all of its brilliance has wicked plans. They'll probably just move Hannity into it, right? That would be great. Anyway, so 3.6 million viewers just for Tucker. All right. So Fox, or I'm not sorry, CNN, who's been hurting bad, obviously, especially since the election. And like, the worst thing that could have happened for them was Trump not winning, quite frankly. Okay. But they got 3.3 million viewers, 3.3 million just in that town hall, which was like 70 minutes. So just a little bit over an hour, 3.3 million viewers. That's pretty darn good. And so, sure, CNN hates Trump, other than the fact that if Trumpy dropped off the earth tomorrow, CNN would be dead, like kaput. Yeah. Okay. They hate him, but they beg for him. All right. They need him. He doesn't need them, but they for sure need him. And it couldn't be more obvious. The mainstream media act like we don't know anything. Like we literally just heard them ask Trump questions about 2020 and January 6th. And then immediately after the town hall, immediately following the town hall, they're asking questions like, why is Trump focusing on these things? Why can't he just move past them? You know, I mean, like, they just suck. Seriously, they suck at their jobs. They suck at life, including Fox News, dumping Tucker Carlson. I mean, I don't know what the hell they're thinking out there. So
Doesn't seem like they are.
No, I don't really think they are either. Anyway, so we're going to move past that. We're going to try to get into some substance. There's not a whole lot of substance, I think, moving forward talking about that stuff either. So let's move forward, because there's way bigger issues here that we need to talk about. So let's talk abortion. Yay, abortion. It's like our third episode, like 3.3 or 3.4.
We've had some problems.
Got a lot of media problems, people. All right, we're figuring it out here.
Well,
We're old. I'm old. I mean, I feel like this should have been, anyway, whatever. It is what it is. We're good to go. So, let's talk the most controversial movement subject since the civil rights movement. Why not? Let's just do that. So he had a really interesting answer in this town hall about abortion. Okay. One thing you have to keep in mind is Trump is very, 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 very responsible to abortion being turned over to the states. All right. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's hear what old Trumpy had to say about abortion, which is something he has intentionally veered away from and still is veering away from.
If you are reelected and you're back in the Oval Office and you get legislation to your desk, would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
What I'll do is negotiate so that people are happy. But the fact that I was able, I'm so proud of it. We put 3 great justices on the Supreme Court. We have almost 300 federal judges on the Supreme Court.
So let's be clear, Mr. President, you would sign a federal abortion ban into law.
I said this. I want to do what's right. And we're looking, and we want to do what's right for everybody.
But what's right?
But now, for the first time, the people that are pro-life have negotiating capability, because you didn't have it before. They could kill the baby in the 9th month or after the baby was born. Now they won't be able to do that.
But I think this is a really important question for you to answer, because this is something every Republican, including those who are running against you for the nomination, are being asked about is, would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
And many of them are going to give you the same answer as I am. First of all, I am honored to have done what I did. And a lot of people said in 150 years, he's now the most consequential president because he saved so many lives. And I'm honored to have done it.
All right. So I don't know if that sounded like an answer to you or not
Sound like words.
at all. Listen, in case folks aren't aware, abortion is going to play a huge role in the upcoming election. Huge. It played a huge role in the midterms. And what happened to the Republicans? They didn't get the results they wanted or the results they expected. Okay. Dems retained control of the Senate. Republicans did not get the majorities they anticipated at all. At all. He's going to have to take a stance eventually. Okay. He's going to have to, just like a lot of the Republicans had to. All right. He's going to be asked about it over and over again. This clip right here that we just heard, I have a feeling we're going to hear more often moving forward, and it's going to be in Biden campaign, like commercials.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, totally.
Because it's about as wishy-washy as it gets. It really is. It's not going away, and the Dems understand how powerful the issue is now. They definitely understand it now, if they didn't before. It's extraordinarily powerful. Without question, Trump is responsible for the Supreme Court turning abortion over to the states. Okay. It's a federalism issue now, and it's going to be touchy. My opinion, I think he should just own it. He doesn't necessarily need to take a stance. He can simply say that it's left up to the states. Again, federalism, the 10th Amendment, as the 10th Amendment says, basically anything not written in the Constitution is pretty much left up to the states. That's how it was supposed to be. He nominated 3 Supreme Court justices, and the Senate confirmed all 3, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, that swung the court conservative pretty much probably for the remainder of our lives, or
Definitely
our
theirs.
quality of lives. I mean, for a long time, they're lifetime appointments.
It's just bananas.
And this was a big deal. Folks that don't think elections have long-term consequences, well, this was pretty serious for a lot of folks, and we're going to be talking about it a lot moving forward. I mean, if you were a pro-choice person, then this was a pretty serious consequence, right? For that election, having those 3 Supreme Court justices being nominated and confirmed and appointed, because now, that's not going away.
Mhm.
It's like that's over. It just is. It's precedent now. Okay. Also, and this is super important, like really, really, really important, and people don't seem to talk about it or even know about it. Okay. But it's, which party identifies with abortion again?
Like with pro-choice?
With pro-choice?
Dems.
Democrats. Okay. Right. So they're primarily the pro-choice party. All right. How many times since 1973, Roe versus Wade was in 1973, have the Democrats held a supermajority? In other words, the presidency, the House, and the Senate.
Sometime during Obama.
Yeah. So, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 times, I think. From 79 to 81 under Jimmy Carter, they had a supermajority. 95 and 96 under Billy Clinton, when he wasn't at Epstein's Island. I can understand how,
He was busy.
he had other priorities there. 2011, 2012 under Barack Obama, and also originally under Biden. And so why didn't they make abortion federally illegal if it was that important.
Or federally legal?
Yeah, sorry, federally legal. Exactly. Why wouldn't they have made abortion federally legal permanently when they had the supermajorities? Because this has always been like, if you think about Republicans, what are some really big topics with Republicans?
Abortion, always.
Abortion is for sure, but guns,
Yep.
taxes,
Yep.
the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Like there's some hardline stuff. Well, for the Democrats, there's hardline stuff too. And abortion is one of those things
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And so the fact that they didn't make it federally legal when they had multiple opportunities to do so, when they knew that their base was clamoring for that, at the very, very least, is pretty damn suspect to me.
Yeah.
That makes me think that this was more about money, special interest, talking points for elections than it was about the actual people of the United States.
It had nothing to do with
Okay.
actual belief.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's not shocking. It seems like it should be shocking,
Still
but
sad,
it's
though.
not shocking. I mean, they had so many opportunities to make this a null point, like void. It would have been voided, like just like that, if they would have made it a federal law. But they didn't. Okay.
I
So
don't feel like anyone's talking about
tough
that
shit.
either.
no, of course they're not talking. The Republicans should be talking about it.
But I think that a large number of American citizens don't understand what a supermajority is, which you've explained to me.
Most citizens, I've been like, I can't like see whoever is watching or listening to this, but I would venture to say that probably the most people that are listening to this right now don't even know how many Supreme Court justices there are.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, I agree with you.
And there's 9, in case you're wondering. It's not an even number on purpose.
Well, and I think that this is part of education and public education, right?
It's just like we talked about federalism.
Yep.
It's like when they say that it's kicked down to the states, people don't know what the hell that means either.
No, I have no idea.
Well, it's like you got to think about COVID. It's like, why in the hell did so many people relocate to Florida, the Dakotas, Montana, Idaho,
Yeah.
right? It was because it was not near as restrictive as the other states they were coming from were. That is federalism. That is states' rights. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the concept is. All right. So a lot of people don't understand that. And that's something that's pretty important. I mean, it also has to do with the Electoral College as well, and how representation is meant to be in a republic versus the democracy, which aren't the same thing either. Okay. So do I think that simply not taking a stance by claiming states' rights is the answer for Trump? No, I do not. I don't think that the evangelical community that fought for decades and fully endorsed Trump against Hillary to eliminate abortion is going to let Trump take no stance on abortion. Okay. Federalism or states' rights be damned. They're not going to care about that. Okay. He can use that as an answer, but I don't think they're going to let that fly. I really don't. He's in a tough spot. As far as I'm concerned, I think he's in a tough spot. And I don't even think we've really even begun to see that yet. Because personally, I think Trump's pro-choice. That's what I think. You want to know something else that's funny about Trumpy that a lot of people probably don't know? Who was the first president in the history of the United States of America to run as a pro-gay gay marriage candidate? Donald Trump.
What?
Yeah. He was the first president that ever ran that was pro-gay marriage.
Are you
Ever.
serious?
Yeah. Not Barack Obama, not Hillary Clinton.
Did they all just avoid it?
No, they were anti-gay marriage.
What?
You can look it up. Yeah. Barack Obama became pro-gay marriage in his second term. They saw it as a losing argument for the polls. So they were kind of like, like behind closed doors, wink, wink, nod, nod. We believe in
Glad
gay
to know
marriage.
it's all really authentic.
Donald freaking Trump
Gay marriage.
was the first president in American history that ran on the pro-gay marriage. Like, I want to say it was platform, because it wasn't. That's what he was.
I need to admire him, even though I really dislike him. And I think that he's probably not a decent human being at all. He forces perspective.
He cares about people more than you think
He
does.
does. And he does more for people than you think. And he's bombastic. And that's what makes him hard for me to like. But he follows through more than anyone else.
Yeah.
It's the
It was
weirdest
the same thing for,
I just am so
permanent
confused. by
permanent
him.
funding for African American colleges.
Ah,
Before he came into office, they had
Mm-hmm.
to reapply every year or every other year or something. And Obama didn't do that. Trump goes in there and permanently makes sure that all the African American colleges have permanent funding forever.
I don't.
There's a few
understand my
things
own
people don't know.
feelings.
There's a few things people don't know. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Whether you like them or not like them, there's the totality of the circumstances.
Are
As we used to
confusing,
say in
but
law
very
enforcement.
interesting. Yeah.
And what a reasonable person would think or understand. But in order to be reasonable, you have to understand the totality of the circumstances, or else you're not going to be reasonable. Okay.
It's a beautiful thing to say, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm just full of that kind of stuff.
You're full of
Or
something.
full of it. And independents who overwhelmingly support abortion by over 60%, by the way, and supported Trump against Hillary again in 2016, aren't going to want to see or support a complete ban on abortion. So he's in a weird spot here, right? A lot of independents voted for him when he became the president. Like he had to, and the evangelical community. But if he comes out for abortion, he's going to piss off the evangelicals and they're going to like rally behind Mike Pence or something.
Yeah.
Okay. If he comes out pro-choice, then, or opposite of that, pro-life, then he's going to do the same thing to the other end. You know what I'm saying? He's going to piss off or if he does the abortion ban, he's going to piss off the independents for the evangelical vote. Really, I think the independent vote's more important. Personally, I think if you're going to focus on a group, the independents are what sways the elections here, because we have registered Democrats and registered Republican voters, and you kind of know most people that are registered Democrats do what? Vote Democrat.
Yeah.
Most people that are registered Republicans vote freaking Republican. People that are independents, they might vote for a Republican governor and a Democratic president in the same year. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's an interesting thing to see how that works. DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has a stance, and in Florida, he's already submitted a bill. What was it? The 60-day heartbeat bill.
6 weeks.
So he's got a stance. Whether or not you agree with the stance or not, he's got a stance. That's his stance, I would think, because he's the governor of Florida. He's the president of Florida. That's what he is. And that's his bill that he's sponsoring, right? Yeah. So he has a stance. And so Chris Christie, who just entered the race, he has an abortion stance. Okay. He opposes abortion, but supports exceptions for rape, incest, and protecting the life of the mother. Okay. But he does not support a federal abortion ban, as some Republicans have proposed. Okay. Quote from him: "I would not be for the federal government being invoked in the issue of abortion in any way. I believe the states should make the decisions." Again, a federalism states' right issue. We know how Mike Pence feels about a federal ban on abortion, right? He's 100% behind it. Okay. Trump's going to have to take a stance, and it's going to be tough. Might as well just get on with it. All right. So let's move on ourselves as well. Meatball Ronnie DeSantimonious. If he ever hears me say that, he's going to fucking hate me, regardless of anything else, right?
Doesn't matter.
But those are some.
We're not in the business of being liked.
Those are all great Trumpian, like
It's
Meatball
beautiful.
Ron and Ron DeSanctimonious.
You can squish them together.
I think he's got another one too that he came out with, but I don't remember. And Chris Christie have officially entered the race. They've both entered the race now officially. Yay, awesome, sweet. We've talked about DeSantis. How do you feel about Christie?
Not swell.
Yeah. Well, to start, he's polling at about 1%.
So, probably, I guess I feel the same way most people do.
Yeah. I mean, no one is excited about Chris Christie, regardless about how he feels about himself, and he feels pretty highly about himself. He's very Trumpy in that way.
He has a lot of confidence.
I mean, what I'm kind of thinking here is that I'm thinking that like the establishment, old school Republican Party, like the Mitch McConnells, Lindsey Grahams, are basically like want to unleash Chris Christie to attack Trump publicly and get him into a fight. I mean, that's what I think. I think that that's what they want to do. I think they want to use Chris Christie is kind of like an attack dog on Trump, because there's not really anybody else, and I don't think Christie is capable of this either personally. So I think
that
he'll
he
crash
had a
and burn.
chance. Yeah.
But I think that's the plan. That's what I think the plan is, because he was always kind of known, you know, as the governor of New Jersey and the boss and all this other kinds of stuff, and he always liked to have that kind of like attitude,
pseudo mafioso kind of.
and so you know, I don't know. He's a former prosecutor. That's kind of his big resume point, outside of obviously being the former governor of New Jersey. But I mean, I don't personally see that as a good thing necessarily. I mean, look at Kamala Harris. She was a former prosecutor, and what was her record as a prosecutor in the state of California? Like, not good. I'll tell you right now. I mean, here's just a little Kamala Harris prosecutor history. She prosecuted the parents of habitually tardy and absent students, calling the issue of students skipping school tantamount to crime. Just put people in jail all the time. Like, who gives a shit? Even amid criticism that the policy disproportionately targeted low-income people of color. You think?
Yep.
You think that's who it targeted?
Mhm.
Didn't support a law that would require police officers to wear body cameras. That seems weird to me as a prosecutor,
why
for
would
sure. I
you-
mean, why the hell not? As a former Fed, I'll tell you right now, as a former federal cop, those cameras get you out of far more trouble than they get you in. They get you out of way more trouble than they get you in.
If you're honest.
As long as you're being like a good cop or whatever, you know what I mean? And then you don't have anything to worry about that. I mean, cops are the only members of our society that can temporarily suspend your constitutional rights, detain you, like you were not free to leave. Detainment, regardless of conviction, can lead to a variety of delicious outcomes, such as loss of employment, loss of housing, loss of spouse and family and children, loss of credit, or the ability to gain any of the before mentioned necessities in our first world society. As citizens, we have the right to defend ourselves against the state. It's not a privilege, people. It's a right. We don't have the privilege to defend ourselves. It's not something that supposedly can be taken away. It's supposed to be a right that was so important that the founders tried to curtail illegal incarceration against the citizenry by the state by enacting 5 of the original 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution have to do strictly with illegal state incarceration of the citizenry. 5, half. Okay. And just to give you guys some perspective on that, I'll give you a little summary on what those are. It basically goes the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Amendment. All right. The 4th Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. Okay. The Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security have wiped their ass with that one. They don't give a fuck about the 4th Amendment. Okay. Period. End of story. All right. Right to due process of law, 5th Amendment, freedom from self-incrimination, double jeopardy. Okay. So you can't be tried for something twice if you're found innocent. All right. Self-incrimination, like you can't be called to testify against yourself, which also goes to people like living in your household, like your spouse.
Okay.
Okay.
So I couldn't be forced to testify against you.
No, not if we're cohabitating.
Huh.
Okay. The 6th Amendment, right of the accused person's right to a speedy and public trial. The public trial thing has kind of gone out the window a little bit, unfortunately. Facing your accusers, right? So if somebody says you did something and you're like, I didn't do that something, like you can face them in court. They can't hide behind like a veil of
or anonymity or anything.
exactly. Okay, which is part of being a free citizen in a free society. Okay. Right of a trial jury. Right of a trial. So the 7th Amendment, jury trial, also in civil cases. So a jury trial being tried by your peers. And the 8th Amendment, freedom from excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishment.
I feel like those two things happen all the time.
Excessive bail happens a lot.
And isolation is cruel and unusual.
Isolation is pretty bad. And obviously people will say the same thing with the death penalty, being cruel and unusual, depending on how what side you fall on that. So, I mean, but that was going on. I mean, the death penalty was also going on back in those days. They didn't do that as cruel and unusual because that was pretty normal back then.
That's pretty fine.
We're talking like 20 years from when they were burning witches. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Harris opposed the state initiative to soften minimum mandatory sentences, even though the criminal justice reform plan she rolled out while running for president called for it. So basically, while she was running for president, she said that she wanted to soften minimum mandatory sentences, but while she was a prosecutor, she was against it.
So while it served her, she wanted to diminish it.
Well,
and then
while she
it
was
served
talking
her,
about
she
criminal
didn't
justice
want to.
reform, while she's like, let's talk about criminal justice reform.
Well,
Okay.
do a better job then.
Yeah, but you know,
That's really frustrating.
do as I say, not as I do, right?
Exactly.
During her tenure as Attorney General, at least 1,800 people were incarcerated for marijuana-related offenses, nonviolent marijuana-related offenses, weed. She also opposed the legalization of marijuana. This is in California. Apparently, she was really into weed prosecutions. Like that was kind of like she was really into drug and weed prosecutions.
Low hanging fruit.
Very, very, very low hanging fruit. Okay. I mean, like, and honestly, as a former cop, it's not really that surprising. I got to be honest with you. It's not really that surprising at all. Most federal and state cops think that weed is bad and that folks that use it are just punk asses with no life prospects. I mean, I've been in these meetings. That's very much the impression you get. For that, they'll justify putting human beings in cages for years and years and years and ruining their lives and just fucking not think another thing about them with a weed conviction. Okay. It's 100% true. Like I said, I've been in those meetings. I've been in those meetings with federal cops, state cops, district attorneys, United States attorneys, their staff. Weed bad. People who smoke weed bad. Prosecution statistics and arrest statistics good.
Awful.
100% the case, man.
People's lives. Those are people's moms and dads.
It's all about statistics. Don't think about it. Don't think for a second it's not. She fought against new DNA testing for death row inmates.
Because
So,
that's logical.
I mean, like like I said, I think that that's a bad thing again. I mean, what would you be scared of? Like, why would you be
You'd
scared
be scared of people you convicted wrongly.
Exactly. So you shouldn't be scared of that, I would think.
It's like the body cam example.
It's, yep.
Mhm.
It's, they don't want a way out of that. Basically, a bottom line, just because Chris Christie was a prosecutor doesn't mean that he was righteous. Okay, cared about people or made good decisions. We talk about it all the time, and that's why our podcast is named DeCarcerated. I think we need to put like less people in jail, not more. I mean, after all, we already put more people in jail than anybody on the planet, probably in the history of the world, based on what we know about humanity for like the last, I don't know,
Not long enough, but no
tens to
written
hundreds
history,
of thousands,
yeah.
however many, depending on whose interpretation you're talking about with human history. I mean, welcome to the United States of incarceration, people. You want to talk about civil rights and civil liberties?
Yep.
This society puts more people in jail than any society that the planet has ever seen in the history of the world.
Because
Congratulations.
It makes money.
Okay. Buckle up, man. It's about ready. It's about ready to get real. Don't do I think that any of these people have a chance to unseat the king, Trumpy? I don't think at all. I think he's going to get the nomination running. I really do, especially with how he's polling right now, which is way higher. He's dead even with Biden, and he's way higher than anybody else in the Republican side. Okay. But there's a few things he's got to take a stance on still. Abortion, as we talked about, and the debt ceiling as well. Okay. Where are we at here with this sucker?
You're okay.
Cool. All right. So, hey, how in debt are we as a society, you think?
I feel like I know this, but I keep forgetting, and it's an astronomical number.
$32 trillion. It's 32 trillion.
Still way more than I was going to guess.
32 trillion.
That's not a real number.
And that's not the best of it. Do you know what our payments as a country are? Or let's just talk about our interest payments. This isn't even paying down the principal for any of
so
you.
disheartening.
The
Just
interest payments.
only.
The Congressional Budget Office, CBO, projects the interest payments will total $663 billion just for this year. 2023, $663 billion we got to pay this year. Okay.
That's interest only.
Mm-hmm.
That's not on the
only
principal.
interest, just interest. Doesn't pay anything down. Rise rapidly throughout the next decade, climbing from $745 billion next year. So we're going to go from 663 to 745. We're going to go 100 billion over, just about. in 2024 to 1.4 trillion in 10 years. In 2033, 1.4 trillion is our interest payment for that year. And total net interest payments will total near 10.6 trillion over the next decade before that one in 2033 kicks off for 1.4 trillion.
Ridiculous.
I mean, I don't
It's not even
I'm not
conceivable.
even dealing with real
Most
money
people
here.
cannot
It's-
even conceive of a billion.
Yeah,
like when
like-
you really dial into it.
like, do normal American households have to operate on a budget?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, yeah. And that's with our money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the federal government operates with our money too.
Yeah, but apparently doesn't have to.
They
have
don't have a budget at all.
Mhm.
Just like what we talk about was it the Pentagon or the Department of Defense?
Oh, failing all of their
Failed their audits for the last 3 years. They're just like, oh, we don't know where $10 billion went
That's so weird.
this year or
So
last year
horrible.
or the year before that.
And no
But we're the
consequences.
Department of Defense.
Yeah.
So
And yet, if we're the IRS, we're gonna hire what was it, 67,000? How many new people?
there's a lot.
How about even 8,000?
Well, they're just going to go after the billionaires, babe.
Oh, are they?
They're
They're
not-
definitely not going to go after people with $600 or more in Venmo payments.
They're definitely not going after the Venmo and Uber drivers. That's for sure. Okay. Do you know when the last time the U.S. paid off its debt entirely to where we had a zero balance?
Absolutely not.
January 8th, 1835, President Andrew Jackson paid off the entire national debt. The only time in the United States history of America, that didn't sound right, that has been accomplished ever. The only time it's ever happened, what happened in 1835 under Andrew Jackson.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy.
And that speaks to our whole society and culture, though. We're like credit based now. We don't have to actually, like, fundamentally and literally have to have something in our hands. We just believe we're entitled to it, so we borrow it.
And that's also led to some of the economic crises that we had, like the housing crisis and some of the other meltdowns that we've had has all been because of bad lending practices and stuff like that, bubbles popping. Kevin McCarthy, the current Speaker of the House Republican, and Biden came up with a deal to raise the debt ceiling again, thereby keeping the war machine turning, baby. But honestly, I don't know if it's going to pass. I mean, it might, but there are a lot of really pissed off Republicans out there. I'm pretty mad at McCarthy himself. If I should have had this ready, but there's some tweets out there from like the Lauren, like Broberts and, a lot of the pretty staunch conservative Republicans, like Tea Party style Republicans that are really, 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 really against this. Like really, really, really not into it at all. And honestly, very, very upset with McCarthy. And so I don't know. It's kind of a mess right now. Trump is being super quiet about this also, which is very unlike him, just like abortion. Why so quiet? Well, both abortion and the debt ceiling are touchy subjects for independents and Republicans. Super touchy. My guess, Trump is going to play the waiting game for a bit here, knowing that he has time to do it. He's got the time to do it because he has the polling is on his side. I don't think he really thinks that he has any serious threats to his nomination. And so I think he can play the waiting game a little bit here. And secondly, some people might not know this, McCarthy and Trump are boys. Like they're homies. Like they hang out, like they've backed each other. Trump is overtly endorsed him just even recently for the speaker role. So he's like, if he comes out against it, then he's saying that McCarthy did a bad job.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's like playground politics.
It kind of is. It could screw up their relationship. And so Trump doesn't seem like he really cares that much about relationships.
He cares about leverage and influence.
Yeah, we're talking about the Speaker of the House here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Stand by, folks. Once Trump kicks it into gear regarding abortion, debt ceiling, Ukraine, which we didn't even talk about now, and that's another thing, we're giving F-16s to Ukraine now. We're also,
unbelievable.
We got drones dropping bombs in Moscow. I mean, like it's getting heavy here. I mean, anybody out there that thinks that we wouldn't dive headfirst into World War III against against the likes of China, Russia, North Korea, Iran.
I don't think we have an ability to conceptualize it. Like, I really don't. I think
I mean-
we are very poorly informed.
Yeah, it shouldn't have anything to do with, people being Russian sympathizers or pro-American means you have to be anti this or that or anything. I was like, can we just understand the fact that we came out of a 20-year war? We've been in perpetual war and combat for like a really long time, spent a lot of money, killed a lot of people.
Damaged a lot of
Like, we just need to go right into World War III. And we just talked about what the debt ceiling is. How much money? We've been giving Ukraine billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, anything. Anyway, it's your turn. Go for it.
It's my turn.
That's your turn.
It's good information.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay. All right. So my stuff. Recently, you may have heard this. If you are a lady, you have probably almost definitely heard this. So there was a recent independent advisory group that typically informs the Department of Health and Human Services. And they put out that they are recommending mammograms and breast cancer screenings for women now as young as 40, with what they state are recent increases in breast cancer for younger and younger women. So hearing this and reading about this and knowing that a mammogram without insurance, so if you haven't met your deductible, which just happened at the pharmacy again, or if you're underinsured, maybe you're uninsured. So this is lots and lots of people, lots of women. It's going to be about $150 on average for a screening alone. So this gets me kind of curious. I start digging and I'm looking at some really alarming statistics. So around 10% of women get called back for diagnostic mammography. And women with dense breast tissue or histories of cancer personally or familially are also more likely to be in that 10%. So of that 10%, only about 0.5%, so 0.5% of the 10% receive the call that there is cancer present. A diagnostic mammogram runs around $500 on average. And if you're called in again for a biopsy, you're looking at between $1,000 and $5,000. And around 4 out of 5 of these biopsies are still benign. So this recommendation for women over 40 to begin mammograms was issued by the United States Preventive Services Task Force, or the USPSTF. What is remarkable to me about this prevention concept is that there is very little, if anything at all, mentioned about the hugely preventive aspects of nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle changes. So in keeping with all of the other aspects of our medical system in the US, what is being touted as high quality care and guidance is actually a very expensive approach to health and seeks to sell the cures and treatments for diseases that are caused by the seller. I will explain this a little bit. So, did you know that in the US, the majority of babies are born Monday through Friday? And this is also during business hours. And it's not because babies are so mindful of hospital staffing.
Oh, man.
I know, right? But it certainly
And
is.
like during the Ice Age, business hour, like
I
kids
know,
being
right?
born during.
No, it's strictly during
Business hours
daylight
in the
hours.
Ice Age?
That's it. Yep. When the cave was quiet. But it actually is about hospital staffing. Inductions and cesareans are scheduled during business hours, which has a number of disturbing elements to it. So scheduling deliveries typically means inducing labor, often with Pitocin or similar drugs. And while waiting until the baby comes knocking is called spontaneous labor. Due dates are rarely entirely accurate either. Only about 5% of women actually deliver on their due date. And yet women delivering a little early or a little later by a few days or even weeks are often panicked and conditioned to be panicked that baby's too early or too late. Induction is billed as a normative approach to labor and delivery, and yet repeatedly data shows that convenience means you sacrifice safety in a number of ways. And I also want to be really clear here. I'm not talking about high-risk pregnancies. Those are not part of my issue. Those interventions are very idiosyncratic and specific to those moms. I'm talking about the majority of pregnancies, which are your average everyday pregnancies. First of all, recent data indicates that women who have spontaneous labors, which is just such a funny way of saying that, end up with a C-section around 9% of the time. For induced women, this jumps to over 25%, even after controlling for risk factors. Postpartum hemorrhaging is around 3 times higher for those that were induced compared to those who spontaneously delivered. Yet repeatedly, women are told that planning their delivery is helpful to them as it provides a reasonable level of control over their infant's entrance to the outside world. So now we have a recommendation that women as young as 40 get routine mammograms as a preventive effort to stave off cancer. In 2021, a Swedish study examined the prevalence of breast cancer as it related to familial history of all cancers. The results of this really broad, in-depth study of over 5 million women in Sweden born from 1931 onward revealed that in women with family histories of cancer, only women with a first-degree relative with ovarian cancer were at elevated risk of breast cancer and should be screened starting around 40 years old. So why should American women be screened so much sooner and without any other information about what actually prevents and mitigates cancer risks in the first place? Could have nothing to do with the fact we pay for our medical care out the nose, right?
No, definitely not. It doesn't have anything to do with pharmaceutical companies or
It's a great way to attack women too, is to be like,
stuff.
let's make you terrified about your unborn baby and cancer.
Oh, and the medical field is just
Garbage.
Yeah.
Okay, so to illustrate my point, I am going to get a little bit personal, which is very uncomfortable for me. Now it's very uncomfortable for me. But I'm going to be vulnerable because I do want others to know how important taking agency and action in your own health is, rather than waiting for a diagnosis, dreading the alarming cost of treatment and care that may be ultimately and completely excessive and in service to insurance companies, the medical industry, and pharmaceutical companies. So at 18, I was chubby. I've always been a little chunky. Now I was walking toward being very, very overweight. I also have awful vision. And so that year I had another routine eye exam. What's funny is I've zoomed into this a lot so I can see it. So it's kind of ironic. I'd been on my own for a while now when I was a teen. And so thankfully I did have medical insurance with my job. They found a spot inside of my eyeball. And over the course of 3 months and hundreds of dollars in copays and deductibles that I could not afford, I was told it was probably cancer. So I went to specialists and ultrasound appointments with a really lonely, horrible fear that I would have my eye removed and be a pirate from 18 years old on. It was, fortunately.
We'll get you some of them birth control glasses there.
Really beautiful.
Let's go faster.
But fortunately, it was just a freckle. It was nothing. It was a pigment in my eyeball. Apparently, it's really common. So at 20, I had an abnormal pap. If you are a man without a woman that shares a lot with you in your life, it's an uncomfortable up the hoo-ha kind of examination. I was told that some cells appeared precancerous and they were removed and found to be benign. I was advised to increase the frequency of these paps to every 6 months. That's not comfortable at all.
I can imagine.
So at 21, I found a lump in my breast. It was scanned and I was told it was unlikely it was cancer, but based on those frequencies of my suspicious paps, I should probably still have it biopsied. This was benign. Additional checks at a different provider revealed it was just common fibrous breast tissue, which should not have resulted in anything more than ultrasounds to confirm it was non-cancerous. It feels a little violating, costly, painful, scary.
Mm-hmm.
So over the next few years, I had my 2 kids. I was super, super sick. And I was prescribed ondansetron from week 2 of pregnancy onward. So this medication is often prescribed for nausea that's encountered with anesthesia and chemotherapy. And it's been prescribed to pregnant women for hyperemesis gravidarum, or that condition I had. It's just basically 24-hour vomiting all the time, even when you're trying to sleep. It's awful. So this medication, though, was later halted for other women because ondansetron in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy is now indicated in orofacial structural abnormalities, which is like a cleft palate, and cardiac issues in infants. So following
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah, exactly. I remember sitting there like baby sleeping. I still have the ondansetron in my purse. and seeing an infomercial like those mesothelioma ones where they're like, have you or a loved one experienced mesothelioma? You may be entitled to compensation. But it was, were you prescribed on Dancitron while pregnant? And I was like, it's in my purse. I took it like crazy because I was so sick. So anyway, following my son's birth, I struggled with an abdominal abscess that was, I no idea why. That got operated on without any adequate anesthesia. I was completely awake, felt everything. And then 2 more abnormal PAPs resulted in a LEEP, or an LEEP, which stands for a loop electrosurgical excision procedure, and uses a wire loop heated by an electric current that removed cells and tissues from my genital tract. Super wonderful. It is exactly as pleasant as it sounds.
Is it as bad as getting the prostate exam?
Well, I wouldn't know. But I'm gonna say it's
I'll just say it's probably
minimum.
that was like, I remember like turning 40 and being like, oh God.
Did you get one?
It's like once you got a finger in your butt, you've always had a finger in your butt.
You would never survive being a woman. throughout all
That
of
comes
this,
from
though,
Rodney Carrington too, by the way, in case you're wondering.
he's so funny.
He's hilarious.
Don't watch him with children.
Nope.
Throughout all of these things, though, nobody asked what I was eating or whether I was supported at home. Sometimes a provider would inquire about stress, and I would dismiss concern because I was embarrassed. I was being abused by my now ex-husband, and I didn't want to add into my life the terror of trying to leave him when I already saw his volatility, and anger for innocuous things like forgetting to put the cap on the toothpaste. So if someone called or accused, I would be dead. So when I did leave, it was super painful. That meant telling the truth about my marriage. It meant admitting I had lied to everyone who ever loved me to cover for him because I thought that was the right thing to do. I started overeating again. And even though I was happier cognitively, my body was still not being treated well. My scares and frequent screenings persisted. So in 2019, I had this kind of creeping realization that at 230 pounds, my back aching, my doctor visits terrifying, and my inability to play well with my kids was simply not how I wanted to live. I wanted my kids to see a strong woman that could be successful and that also took care of herself because it meant more of me was available for them. So I started reading and I started listening to podcasts and I started talking to people that were healthy. And instead of saying, well, I'll never look like that, I started asking, how did you work for that? How did you earn that? And the response, is unbelievable. Most people who are healthy really, really want everyone to be healthy because they understand how much life opens up when you are working with a strong foundation. In 2 years, I lost 50 pounds. And in 3, I lost another 30. And now I'm inching toward 100 pounds of weight loss and focusing on how to tone and shape and get stronger and get better at all things body oriented. This was 90% changing my diet, treating sugar like the devil it is, making sure a late night drink with friends doesn't lead to a cigarette or two, and keeping far, far away from the foods that make me feel hungry, like simple carbohydrates and wine. Wine's tricky.
Sugar.
10% of this was exercise and creating a new love for exertion and attention to what my body is capable of. So in the last 4 years, I've had no cancer scares, no blood sugar issues, sleep like the dead with incredible quality most of the time. Mm-hmm. I am psychologically happier, physically more energetic, and my kids see someone who got strong and makes better choices about what I put in my body. And they're learning better habits too.
They saw somebody who was able to successfully go rock climbing outdoors.
Yeah.
Like,
and not fall like that.
like you can't do that as somebody who's habitually overweight.
Yeah, not at all.
You're not going to be able to do that.
And it's everything. It's the ability to do things, and it's the self-perception that changes how you express yourself to the world. Like instead of being the person that avoids pictures and doesn't want to be in memories, it's I don't think about it, which is the greatest gift in the world, to not think about it. Which I'm looking at you like, right? But you might not understand that because
I don't think about it.
You don't think about it.
I don't.
Yeah. It's life-changing. So what bothers me about our industrial medical approach to intervention first, prevention never, is that we don't address what is uncomfortable. We want to fix rather than prevent because cures cost money and lifestyle changes don't even come close to that dollar mark. Societally, our approaches to health have exclusively been industry approaches to making more and more money. Last week, we talked about the outright lying, or I guess last episode, we talked about the outright lying that the processed food industry had done to promote high fructose corn syrup and other processed foods while denigrating fats in all forms. This led to spikes in obesity, diabetes, even celiac disease. We related that to the COVID vaccine being pushed as though we don't remember its risk of myocarditis and other side effects that have given people pause in the last few years, in addition to its repeatedly downgraded efficacy, despite its creation being hailed as a miracle. So if we want to look at rates of suicide, depression, substance abuse, and other behavioral health disorders, we're told to take prescriptions and seek therapy, but rarely does a physician insist on monitoring exercise with the same rigor as monitoring medications, despite overwhelming data that places aerobic exercise 3 times weekly is comparable or better than sertraline, one of the most commonly prescribed SSRIs. So we're finally moving a little toward understanding that trauma in childhood and adolescence is the indicator for behavioral health issues. And yet we continue to over-incarcerate and alienate fathers socioeconomically when having equitable parenting is one of the most impactful ways to mitigate developmental trauma and issues in childhood. This does connect.
Try to tell that to the court.
Right? I'm trying.
Court's just like, how much money you can give, dude.
Exactly.
Don't worry about being a dad.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. But I mean, and that's the issue. Consider for a moment a society where money is made from hardship. Criminal and civil charges almost exclusively leveraged at our poorest citizens. Obesity, substance abuse, and mental illness all make an enormous amount of money for those selling you solutions that never address the reasons they exist in the first place. So this is your opportunity to listen not to your first thoughts, which are the ways in which you have been conditioned, but to your second thoughts, which are the ones responding to that conditioning. Second thoughts examine the origins of the first and beg for a chance to guide you through your discomfort into a place where you are living your life with your truest self. The news is not your friend. Mass media is the voice asking you to buy something, an idea, a product, an identity, a cure. Find your answers everywhere to create a whole picture and find them in places that do not gain from your hardship, but benefit instead from your freedom.
Nice. You know, we're only one of 2 countries on earth that allow pharmaceutical advertising on their
You can
network
tell immediately.
television.
I remember driving up to BC
Mhm.
on I-5,
Mhm.
and it would be, and these were billboards, billboard, and then you cross over, nothing. It's like a different world. And that's just the visual information, like on the road. It has nothing to do with like media
Yeah.
on TV.
Well, their COVID policies sucked.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying. Like-
It's an interesting thing because we absolutely, the media 100% pushes this stuff
Oh, yeah.
big time.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, if you watch Fox, you know, or CNN or MSNBC or any of them, like half of their commercials at least are
Mhm.
pharmaceutical.
Do you have mild
commercials.
plaque psoriasis?
Mhm.
Don't think about your diet. Take this pill.
Half the commercial
Mhm.
is you're gonna shit your eyeballs out to your butt. You know, but hey, don't worry about it because you're not gonna itch on the side of your right bicep anymore. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like
That is exact though.
it's totally true. It's 100%.
That's really funny.
All right, time for the coward of the week. All right, and you know why not? Why not do it? Mass media, mainstream media. Oh, mass media, you beautiful disaster, you. Honestly, we got a lot to work with here, like years and years of material. Quite frankly, it's too easy. We could literally point to just about anything over the last 3 or 4 years. Mainstream media has really dicked things up, and nobody trusts you. We don't trust you. Nobody listening to us trusts you. People that don't listen to us don't trust you. Nobody does, including Fox News. Again, you suck too. But here's the deal. The way you handle the Trump town hall, the way you handle like RFK Jr., it's too good to pass up. All right. Statists were furious that the host even let Trump talk at all, even more pissed that the audience was filled with Trump supporters, as if that should have been surprising. I mean, what did you think you were going to get? Joe Scarborough from MSNBC stated that the town hall was the worst thing he'd seen since the January 6th insurrection. He had to make that connection. Forget about like children being killed at school.
Yeah.
Or all the people getting killed in Ukraine. That's not, that's definitely not worse.
The worst thing he's seen is the January 6th. Somebody putting their feet up on Pelosi's desk.
Yeah.
That was bad. That's better than that. That's definitely worse than dead kids.
Okay.
Good Lord.
Yeah, that's, you know, they don't have any concept of actual reality here.
Traffic.
So with that being said, I'm going to play an MSNBC clip, which aired directly after the town hall from the host. Here we go.
It is not news what happened tonight at 8 p.m. on another network, and there is no sense in fact-checking or replaying the highlights. We are not going to analyze the former president of the United States repeating lies, smears, and bigotry. We have all heard it many, many times before. However, what we need to do tonight is solve for how news organizations will cover Donald J. Trump, the twice impeached, indicted, liable for sex abuse private citizen, if he does in fact win the Republican nomination.
Here's the thing, lady, and it's super outrageous. All right. I hope you're ready, because this is a crazy concept coming up. We don't live in the United States of MSNBC, or the United States of CNN, or the United States of Fox News, or the United States of Breitbart News, or the United States of Pfizer, or the United States of fucking Walmart. It's not up to goddamn you to tell us what to think, who to vote for, how to cover, what misinformation is, what to put in my body, who to marry, whether or not to own a firearm, or even if I want to consume cannabis, DMT, or mushrooms. Heaven forbid. Said that out loud. This nanny state shit needs to go, man. And I don't trust a damn thing that any of them say anymore. Finally, you don't get to decide whether or not to cover a presidential candidate.
Yeah.
You don't get to just decide that. You were paid to cover the news. The news. And like it or not, that's news. Oliver Darcy of CNN had this to say about his own network, like the network that writes his check, that employs him. It's hard to see how America was served by the spectacle of lies that aired on CNN Wednesday evening. Okay. Spectacle of lies coming from a CNN anchor. Okay. That's laughable coming from them, but it's not, because they kind of have like lots of power. Listen, I don't think that Trump is the bastion of honesty. I think he's made some terrible decisions, says some terribly stupid shit from time to time, but he's the former president of the United States of America. Okay. He's also the face of the Republican Party, which is half of the political establishment in the United States, and the current clubhouse leader for the Republican nomination for president coming up again. So whether you like him or not isn't relevant, and it shouldn't be relevant. Whether you think he's a liar or not, find him repugnant or not, is also not the point. In a democratic republic to which we live, you do not get to tell people what to think, or tell people what to say, or tell people how to live. I have my opinions, absolutely. Mel has her opinions, absolutely. But it's not my job to tell you what to think. We simply want to tell you what's happening. This is what's up. And guess what? We think that you're smart enough out there, even you former Rangers and BW dudes, to like come up with your own conclusions and like have your own actions. Okay. Imagine that. Weird world.
How dare you?
How dare us? CNN, Joe Rogan's taking horse dewormer. Let's put a filter on his face to make him look yellow.
Yeah.
These are the people that are telling us about liars. Anyway, that's our Coward of the Week.
I think it was good.
And on to something far more uplifting.
Always. And brief too, because he doesn't need a lot of words and he seems to be a man of few words anyway. So hero of, I'm going to say the month, because I don't remember when the CMAs were, but
right.
Chris Stapleton, for figuratively cleaning up at the CMAs and then staying to literally clean up afterward, complete with his nice suit and his cool hat and a leaf blower, cleaning up confetti. This man could change himself or let himself be changed by success, but instead he is who he is, and he loves his family, his music, and remaining the kind of person you want your kids to aspire to be: humble, helpful, and authentic.
Mhm.
This is the example of a person that puts the country back in country music.
Contra,
My country back in country music.
The dude was in pressed jeans, cowboy tie, overcoat, cowboy hat, probably like $1,000 boots, and a leaf blower.
Doing the right
I
thing.
mean, like, it's awesome. Good work.
That's good. Boom.
Yeah. That's bad. That's fine.
Oh my gosh, really?